Hey guys, thank you for tuning in. NintendoKid here with a new Nintendo Switch accessory review. Today I'm going to have a look at the Donkey Kong wired controller sent to me by PowerA's. Thanks a lot guys. I'm going to compare this with the Dolby wired Pro controller that I reviewed last time. If you've missed that video, be sure to check it right up there. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Let's go bananas. What some of you may not know is that I am the biggest Donkey Kong fan you'll ever see. I mean, I have played every single Donkey Kong game the world has ever seen, except for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, somehow. And as I'm anyways a sucker for accessories, the moment those Donkey Kong bongos came out, I bought them. In fact, I bought 2 of them. It's Donkey Kong. But the one thing that I've always been dreaming of was a Donkey Kong style Nintendo controller. And now that finally... apologies for that. So as I was saying, now that finally a Donkey Kong controller has hit the Nintendo systems, I can't wait to open it and check out if it is just as cool as I'm hoping. So right out of the gate, I can tell you this box art looks amazing. It has the jungle theme on the front side. It has this beautiful image of an even more beautiful controller on the front, and it has the seal of approval of Donkey Kong himself. Okay. On the sides we can see some close-ups of this really nice looking controller, and on the back side it mentions some features including its soft touch and its 8 feet removable cable. If you remember the previous controller that I reviewed, it had a 6-foot cable, so this is a definite advantage over that one. And the cable is removable. So other than that, of course, it mentions that it is manufactured in China, most likely in the same city that I'm living right now, though the product has been sent to me straight from the US. Now let's open up this bad boy and see how it looks inside. So we have this one flip right there, and oh, we have the USB cable straight laying on top here. So we can take this out, it's nicely bundled, and then we just unfold these two and out it comes. There it is. This is a really niche packaging. It has a manual at the bottom, Donkey Kong wired controller, standard manual right there. But this is really nice how it is packaged in there. There's no shock absorption or anything of that kind. Doesn't really need that, and there it is. There it is. I've been waiting for this for many years, and finally it's there. It looks amazing, and I have to say, truth be told, the box doesn't really do justice. On the box itself it looks really yellow, even greenish to some extent, while the real controller is much more orange. I hope you can see it on camera. It has this Donkey Kong, it has this embossing right there. Good layout. The buttons, directional pad of course, twin stick, ZLZR and LNR buttons. On top you can see the USB cable input. On the whole, a really nice controller. It's a little bit small. If I take the Dolby controller right here, which of course doesn't have a detachable cable, so that is hardwired, this controller is much wider. So that is one thing. I recommended this one for people with large hands, and this one is definitely more for people with smaller hands, and say my hand size is quite appropriate for this. Laying these controllers side by side, you can clearly see the size difference, where the Donkey Kong controller is much smaller, much more akin to the original Joy-Con in the Joy-Con grip. The Dolby controller is much broader, as mentioned previously. When it comes to the overall layout of the controller, you can see that the Donkey Kong controller is also much closer to the original Joy-Cons and varies quite a lot from the Dolby controller, where the Dolby controller has the joysticks on one line and the A, B, X and Y buttons on the same line as the directional pad. The Donkey Kong controller has the right joystick pushed inwards and downwards to have this diagonal control. Also, the A, B, X and Y buttons are much bigger than you'll find them on the Adobe controller. And the travel distance is also less. In these, it is quite flat and really responsive. For the Adobe controller, you have to press a little harder, and the spacing in between therefore feels more, though the spacing itself is quite the same. But this is just easier swapping between the buttons. Now, the plus and minus buttons on the Donkey Kong controller are arrayed in a horizontal line, same as the Joy-Cons. Same as the Adobe controller as well. However, on the Adobe controller we find that the home button and the sharing button are aligned vertically. And on the Donkey Kong controller we see that those are horizontal, again the same as the Joy-Cons. Now, an important thing that is missing on the Joy-Cons, of course, is the directional pad or the D-pad, which both of these controllers have. I already mentioned that I was not too big of a fan of the Adobe controller in that regard, as these sides are tapered and I'm not overly fond of that. On the Donkey Kong controller we find that the D-pad is much firmer and doesn't offer all that much freedom of movement, and this is much closer to the original D-pad as you know them from Nintendo. Really comfortable, especially for these older style games that you want to play with the D-pad rather than the joystick. Another thing to mention about these joysticks is that they are really large. Compared to, say, the Adobe controller, or anyways compared to the Joy-Con controller, these joysticks are really big and they're flattened. That is something that I'm not fond of when you have to lay your thumb on the joystick. But the sides are really nicely finished. So if you play a game like Mantis Burn Racing, which I'll be showing in just a minute, testing the controller, I prefer playing much more by pushing the joysticks, by keeping your thumb on the side, and in that regard this controller is really comfortable. Adobe controller joysticks have this pushed out shape, so in that case it's much more comfortable laying my thumbs on top of them instead of pushing them, because these don't have that bevel that the Donkey Kong controller has. A big thing with any controller are the shoulder buttons, and the Donkey Kong controller has done a really great job in that regard, because the LNR and ZR buttons are so nicely tucked together, and by profiling them in this almost U shape you can very easily switch between these two buttons, and that is really comfortable. Furthermore, these are so sensitive that the slightest touch pushes the button all the way down. There is really minimum effort. And that is not only really comfortable, it is also easy on the hands. So in some games where you constantly have to keep pressing down the ZL or ZR buttons, this one is a relief. Where, say, the Adobe controller has this spacing in between the ZL and ZR and LNR buttons, and you'll need much more force to press these buttons down. Now, as mentioned before, the Adobe controller has of course a hardwired cable that cannot be removed. The Donkey Kong controller comes with a detachable cable. Something really neat, not essential, but it is really nice if you want to store it away. You don't have this hassle of cable management. A big miss in my eyes with the Donkey Kong controller, no matter how beautiful, is its lack of any rumble feature, and that is a little beyond me. Where a controller like this one has a really strong rumble feature, this controller doesn't have it at all, and I am one for haptic feedback. I like my rumble in there. I have been a big fan of rumble features in controllers ever since the days of the Nintendo 64, and to see it lacking in this controller is beyond me. Now, when it comes to the material finish of the faceplate of the controller, you can clearly see by the reflection of light that the Adobe controller has a shiny plastic finish, except for, of course, these two grips on the side. The Donkey Kong controller has a matte finish, except for perhaps the Donkey Kong logo right in the middle there, and the finish, the print itself, is absolutely gorgeous. It has these Donkey Kong barrels, it has the bananas all over the place, and of course Donkey Kong himself. One thing to notice though is that the Adobe controller came with this USB to USB type C connector, so you can also plug it in the switch when it is not docked. That is something that doesn't come with the Donkey Kong controller, though of course you should be able to hook it up straight up into the Nintendo Switch dock. So as you can see, the Nintendo Switch is docked and hooked up to the laptop through the capture card, and we're going to connect both of these controllers and see if everything is as plug and play as advertised. We're going to connect it first straight into the dock, and then we're going to check how it works if we're plugging it in straight through the USB-C port. So as you can see, right now we only have one pair of Joy-Cons wirelessly connected to the Nintendo Switch. So let's connect the Donkey Kong controller through its provided cable. So we take this one end, plug it into the controller just like that, and the other end straight into the dock. Nothing shows up yet, though I press one button and there it is. Let's also connect this Dolby controller in the second USB port. Let's press a button and there we are, both of them. Awesome. Let's head into Mantis Burn Racing and let's see how it works. I'm currently reviewing this game, so that review should be out shortly. It's an absolutely amazing game, but back to the controller. Yeah, this works really well. The size of this joystick is really comfortable. The size is comfortable, that side grip is really good. One of the main reasons of choosing this game for this product review is its use of shoulder buttons. Personally, I'm not a fan at all of using shoulder buttons for acceleration or braking. I think that should be done with face buttons. But using this controller for a game that uses shoulder buttons for acceleration and for braking is really comfortable. I've already mentioned before that the travel time is really less on these shoulder buttons, and that you need very less effort to press and hold down these buttons, and that makes it comfortable even for long sessions of these kind of games. Now let's quickly switch over to the Dolby controller and see how it compares. So we just hot swap them out and we pick that controller up. Yeah, these buttons are much harder to press and hold down. It takes much more energy and your finger will start hurting even after short sessions of play, and that is something not so comfortable. So for shooters this is fine, but for long sessions of racing games just like this one, you'll definitely want to go with the Donkey Kong controller. Now let's have a quick look at a one-to-one comparison of the D-pad by playing a game called Sly Spy, which I recently reviewed. If you haven't seen that yet, be sure to check it out. It's a really cool game. Personally, I'm a big fan of using an arcade stick for these kind of games, but for the purpose of this review and for people out there who don't have an arcade stick, definitely use a D-pad instead of the joystick. Okay, so this D-pad is quite loose, as I mentioned before, and takes quite some effort pressing down. Now let's pause the game right here and swap out this joystick and go back to the Donkey Kong controller. Yeah, this D-pad is definitely more comfortable when it comes to these retro style games. It takes much less effort pressing down the buttons, and because it's much firmer, it's also easier to keep single directions. Okay, now we've seen how it works when connected to the Nintendo Switch dock. So let's take out the Switch and try connecting them to the USB-C port. First, let's try the Dolby, as this one comes with that. So we have that little connector right there, and we plug it in just to show you. Right now, of course, nothing is there. And when we plug it in, it lights up right there. And everything works perfectly fine. Now let's unplug this. Let's go back to the controllers there. Let's unplug this one. There it goes. And let's try the Donkey Kong controller, which should work flawlessly as well. Let's press a button. And there we are. Perfectly fine. Great to see. Everything works fine. So there you have it, guys. I've had a lot of fun reviewing this Donkey Kong controller. It is a gem, an absolute gem. If you're a fan of the Donkey Kong series, you should have gotten one already even before seeing this video. Now, if you're wondering, should I be buying this controller or any other third-party controller? One thing you have to keep in mind, of course, is the lack of a rumble feature. I mentioned that because a lot of people out there, including me, find it a very integral part of video gaming, and I don't understand why it's not in here. They must have had a good reason for it. Now, when it comes to its directional pad, this one is really comfortable, more comfortably so than the Dolby controller that I reviewed recently. The joysticks are really nicely done, and the face buttons as well as the shoulder buttons are really high quality. Of course, there's the detachable 8-feet cable, and overall it is a very comfortable grip. I recommend this controller to anyone out there who has the budget for it. And if you don't have this specific madness for Donkey Kong products like I have, then you should definitely go out and check PowerA's full range of these controllers, as they have this beautiful collection of controllers, including Yoshi, including another Zelda controller, including Mario and Bowser. That one is really beautiful as well. And even if you don't go out and buy these ones for use, these are absolute collectibles, and I hope PowerA will keep these in store long enough for you to collect, and I just hope that they keep on adding to this line of products, because these are gorgeous. Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out their website. Leave a comment in the section down below if you own any of those, or if you're planning to pick this one up, and I would like to know what you think of them. If you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up. If you don't, hit the thumb down and subscribe to the channel for more videos. See you next time.